Okay, we'll start the meeting now.
Great.
Okay, hello everyone. Hello all over the world, and it's a good way to start our year. We are in our first session of our series on this topic, which I'm sure it will be very, very interesting. And I would like, of course, to introduce to you our moderator for tonight. And I will just give a brief background. Okay. For, of course, our the president of RAGCED. Okay, Carl Cherlevin has been a Rotarian since 1991. First, as a member of hello, yeah, first as a member of Crescent Rotary, and since 2006, as a member of the RC of St. Petersburg, Florida. He served as governor of District 6950 in 2011 to 2012, as District Rotary Foundation Future Vision Chairman in 2012 to 2013, District Rotary Foundation Chairman for 2013 to 2016, and as Zone 34 Endowment Major Gifts Advisor during 2015 to 2018. He and his wife, Lina, have participated in multiple polio immunization efforts in India, Pakistan, and Nigeria. Carl is presently the chairman of the board of directors of the Rotary Action Group for Community Economic Development and part of the Rotary Foundation Major Gifts Initiative. Carl is the recipient of the Rotary Service Above Self Award, the Citation for Meritorious Service, the Distinguished Service Award, and was Rotarian of the Year for District 6950 in 2009 and 2010. He is also vice chairman of Smile Asia, a federation of cleft lip and palate charities based in Singapore. Carl is head of Westlake Ventures, which invests in development stage businesses, and chairman of EM Labels, a specialty printing business in Mexico City. He has a BA from Rice University and an MBA from Dartmouth College. Previously, he was a CPA in Texas and North Carolina. Carl and his wife, Lina, have two adult children. Emily is an assistant professor at the University of Michigan in Ann Arbor, and Rick is a director at SoftBank Robotics in San Francisco, and two grandsons. Ladies and gentlemen, let me introduce Carl, our president, RAGCED president. Hi, Carl.
Hey. Christina, thank you very much, and welcome to everyone to this first of our seminar series on microfinance. We'll have a total of 5 programs over the next several months, and this is our first one. So let me begin this by sharing my PowerPoint presentation. Share my screen. So hopefully you can all see that at this point.
Yep, it's clear.
Very good. Okay, I want to, so we're going to, I first want to begin by giving you just a brief introduction to RAGCED, the Rotary Action Group for Community Economic Development, since some of the participants may not be familiar with what we do. But we are one of 26 action groups of Rotary, each one connected to the, focused on some aspect of the Rotary Foundation. Let's see here. In trouble advancing this. There we are. So you there's a good chance you are familiar with the UN Sustainable Development Goals, and we are particularly focused on goal number 1, which is the elimination of poverty in all forms. I believe all Rotarians are interested in this particular goal, of course. How do we do it? Well, we're focused in the area of growing local economies because we believes that if we can strengthen local entrepreneurs and community leaders, especially women in these communities, we can have a real positive impact towards achieving that first sustainable goal of the UN. And we do this by helping provide training and access to well-paying jobs and also access to financial institutions. And we think we can do this. We can create opportunities to help individuals and communities to thrive both financially and socially. So what is the goal of RAGCED? Our job is to be a source of knowledge and expertise, helping Rotarians plan, implement, and manage what we believe are both impactful and sustainable economic development projects that are going to create lasting change in poor and underserved communities. Obviously a big task, but that's what we're trying to do. We have 6 different pillars, and our speakers today are going to talk some about these. And you can see what these 6 pillars are, and we try to work on each and every one of them. And we do it by focusing on these 9 areas. That we can help Rotarians, Rotary clubs, and Rotaract clubs by providing expert advice, needs assessment, helping them find project partners, do case studies, help finding funding sources, provide training and education, today being an example of that, helping identify best practices, also something we hope to accomplish today, provide community outreach and project evaluation. So together, doing this, we can help create opportunities, helping individuals and communities thrive both financially and socially. And we do it, and the examples you can see here, in some of these types of projects with agriculture, business development, a program called Adopt a Village, solar lights, a number of other things. But today we're focused on the one related to microfinance and microloans. As I said earlier, we're going to have 5 different sessions. This is session number 1, and we have 2 key objectives today. The first is to introduce participants to microfinance and then offer a process overview of it. We'll have 2 speakers, and then we'll have time at the end for your questions. So as you develop, questions come to mind, please put them in the chat, and we'll look forward to discussing these questions later on. So with that, I would like to introduce our first speaker, Jody Fisher. Jody is the Director of Development of Fundación Adelante, which is based in the United States, but operates principally in Honduras. And she's going to give you an overview of microfinance and talk in particular about what her organization, Fundación Adelante, is doing in this particular area. So with that, let me turn it to Jody.
Good morning. Thank you so much for having me. I assume that you guys can all see my screen. I've been doing this work for a long time. I've worked with government contractors, foundations, and NGOs for over 15 years, supporting both education and economic development projects, both domestically and internationally. I have a master's in international development from the University of Denver, and I've been doing a lot of humanitarian projects over the years, and I feel very passionately about the power of microfinance to transform lives. I am going to go a little bit into the both description of microfinance as well as why microfinance. Microfinance is often a term confused with
excuse me, Gomathi and Rakesh has Jody's microphone frozen?
Yes.
Okay. Jody, you
I'm
still
so
with us?
sorry.
Oh,
Living in
okay.
Honduras, the power just went out, so I'm now on my hotspot, and I hope my internet connection is better. Can everyone hear me?
We can hear you. So please continue. Can
Sorry about that. This is one of the joys of living in a developing country. So I was just about to go into the why of and what of microfinance. Forgive me if I've already said this portion. I just don't know when I got cut off, but microfinance is often confused with microcredit.
Oh.
Okay,
Did we lost her again?
we have the same problem.
To impoverish people.
I think
Hi,
By education.
Jody, we can't hear you. You can maybe switch off your video when you speak, then we can hear you, even though we can't see you.
Say that again.
If you could,
Your internet is choppy, so you could switch off your video and just speak, so you could share at the same time.
yeah, just turn off your video.
Can everyone hear me better now?
Yes.
Can everyone hear me better now?
Jody, we can't hear you continuously. We hear you intermittently. So if you're okay with it, if you can switch off your video, then maybe we can hear you better.
Video takes a lot of bandwidth. If you turn off the
Yes.
video, then the bandwidth will be used for your voice.
Mhm.
Can you hear me?
Perfect.
Yes.
Please go ahead.
Go ahead.
I'd like to suggest you to send the presentation to other people.
Yeah, maybe if you give it to Gomathi
Just
to,
speak.
yeah.
Send the PowerPoint presentation to Carl, for instance, and just speak. And Carl present it.
Okay, I don't have it. Gomathi, you have the presentation?
I don't have the presentation because they didn't share it with me because I don't have it.
Okay.
Say to her to send to you by WhatsApp or other way you can present it. And she only speaks.
Yeah, I don't think she sent it to me. Let me look.
Can you share the presentation with me, Carl?
I don't have it. That's just it. I'm looking to see if Jody sent it to me. No, she did not send it to me.
might have it.
You have it?
I might.
Can you run it for her, Robin?
Hold on. I don't have the PowerPoint. I just have a PDF, I think.
Oh, okay. That,
Show the
maybe we-
PDF though.
What?
You could share the PDF.
Yeah, share the PDF. That would work.
PDF can be shared.
Yeah. That'll work.
Timothy, I'm going to send you a link to that, to her presentation.
Okay. Send me via email, Robin.
I just sent you a link to Jody's presentation.
Link where?
Also, just like to suggest maybe we can pause the recording until we get this sorted.
Involved with RAGCED, but she is also a cadre, which means she is a specialist for the Rotary Foundation, particularly in economic development. So Robin is going to talk about another aspect of microfinance. Let me turn the meeting over to you, Robin.
Great. Let me share my screen. Hopefully I do not have similar problems. Good morning. Carl told you a little bit about me. This, you know, as Rotarians, we often list these long lists of things we're involved in Rotary. So you'll see there my various roles in Rotary, some of which Carl mentioned. Thank you for the opportunity to spend some time with you to talk about microfinance and how we together can eliminate poverty by empowering people. So first, I want to talk a little bit about the size of the problem and the issue. So this is an interesting graph that shows the percentage point change in the poverty rate across different regions in the world. You all may know that poverty has actually been decreasing across the world for at least the past 5 years, if not the last 10 years. But this shows that it's also decreasing as well. So these little bubbles represent across this, on the right side of this no change bar, this is where poverty rate is increasing. Here's where it's decreasing. So you see it's still increasing in many regions is the point I want to make. So let's talk about microfinance and us as Rotarians. We can get some of the background on microfinance from Jody when she's able to get back on the internet. But Rotary supports microfinance through grants and projects. It's microfinance happens to be a component of the community and economic development area of focus, which is why we're here today with this Rotary Action Group. We, in addition to microloans, may train people to have more marketable skills and skills that will bring them a higher wage. There's other different types of microfinance projects that are supported by the Rotary Foundation. But today we're mostly talking about microloans. The Rotary Foundation invests several $1 million a year in microfinance type projects in the community and economic development area of focus. So I think Carl briefly mentioned this. There's really 6 pillars that we have to address. We often think about the loan itself and the capital, but all of these areas are critically important to successful microfinance and growing successful businesses. I'll also mention that these excuse me, that these 6 pillars dovetail with the requirements that Rotary puts out for doing a successful global grant. So these go hand in hand. Let me walk through a little bit of detail in each of these areas. So community assessment. All projects have to begin with a community assessment, whether it's a global grant or a microfinance project outside of a global grant. What are the economic and cultural characteristics of the community? What are its economic needs? What are the business opportunities and markets? If there is a quantifiable need for a microloan program, which needs to be proven through the community assessment, then you need to actually assess the average size of the loan, how much money is needed to get started. It depends on the type of business, etc. And then to determine the financing required for the project or for the global grant that you're starting. The needs assessment confirms that the community is receptive to the microfinance and that the type of capital investment that is required is available. Next is education. Two of the most important pillars, not just for sustainable microfinance project, but to help the entrepreneurs create sustainable, long-lasting businesses, are education and mentoring. I have a significant background in venture management, in addition to my engineering background, and educating, training, and mentoring entrepreneurs and small business owners is critical for their success. A lot of times, someone's what's called a subject matter expert. They're really good at the product or service that they're going to provide through their business, but they don't really know very much about business. They don't know very much about leadership. They don't know very much about all of the elements that need to come together to create a successful business. So this education piece, as well as the mentoring piece, which I'll talk about in a minute, are critically important. So the capital. Now, when we think of microfinance, this is usually what we think about. How much money is there? What's the average size of the loan? Where does the loan capital come from? Jody is going to talk more about an example of what Adelante does in Honduras. And there they do small business loans and individual loans. There's also other types of microfinancing institutions. There's loan groups. There's different types of capital structures that can be used for these projects. The examples we'll give you today, though they may vary around the world and you may use different types of models. The examples we'll use today are single individual loans, as Adelante provides, and then also how you can wrap a project in a global grant and get the matching funds from the foundation to do a microfinance project. I mentioned mentoring. You know, excuse me again. We can take young entrepreneurs through training in business plan development. We can train in business plan development, we can train in finances, we can train in budget, but things come up along the way. Entrepreneurship is very challenging, and having a long-term mentor to work hand in hand with the entrepreneur through their development of their business is critically important. This is also an ideal role for Rotarians. When you do a global grant, Rotarians must be involved in the development and implementation of the global grant. And so here's where Rotarians, with their experience and knowledge, you know, we talk about time, talent, and treasure. This is the talent piece where Rotarians can act as mentors to these loan recipients and to these small businesses. Networking. So we all know that who you know is sometimes as important as what you know. And to develop a strong network in the community of other business owners, of municipal partners, folks that can help you, a entrepreneur, understand the market. It's another form of mentoring actually as well, to have networks where you can talk to people about your challenges and get support and help from people that may have been through those challenges in the development of their own business. For many years, I ran some small networking groups. You might call them mastermind groups, where you bring together business owners from small to medium-sized businesses into groups where they help each other and talk about what's going on in their business each month. And these are extremely valuable. The data shows that the businesses that join these kind of mastermind groups or networking groups grow their businesses at a significantly faster rate than those that don't. Monitoring and evaluation. So you can't improve what you can't measure. It is an old saying. So both when you're developing a global grant, or even if you're just doing a microfinance project outside of a global grant, you first have to determine what are you going to accomplish. You have to quantify that through goals and numbers to meet those goals, then actually measure how you are doing relative to achieving those goals, progress status reports, and adjusting as needed. And again, this is, as you may know, a big part of what's required to successfully get approval for a global grant from the Rotary Foundation. Interestingly enough, in a global grant in any microfinance project, we can't just do it as Rotarians. We have to have a partner to provide the loans. So, and I'm guessing many of you have done global grants, and you may be familiar with what's called the cooperating organization. This is an organization that's helping the Rotary clubs implement the project. And in the case of microfinance, you have to have a cooperating organization to actually hold the capital and implement the loans. We can't do that as Rotarians. So throughout the project of a microfinance project, you might have all these different types of partners. You've got your Rotary partners in the case of a global grant, a host and an international partner. You have maybe someone doing the education piece. You have someone doing the outreach or market analysis. You may have people doing mentoring. You've got the finance partner. These may be multiple cooperating organizations. And in some cases, you may be able to get all of this just between the two Rotary clubs involved in the global grant and the cooperating organization. So Jody was going to, and hopefully after I talk, we'll talk about how Adelante uniquely in Honduras covers all of the pieces other than what the Rotary clubs can do. So you can, depending on your region, find one partner or multiple partners to cover the different aspects of the project. So I wanted to walk briefly through a global grant example of a microfinancing project. This one happens to be in Honduras, but there are many aspects of this that would be applicable in your region or with your Rotary clubs and districts. So first, just a little bit of a tutorial. I know many of you have done global grants, but a global grant requires a host sponsor club in the region where the grant is taking place and an international sponsor from somewhere else in the world. Both sponsors must be qualified to participate in the global grant. They together develop a project plan. They do the host club does the community assessment. They develop the budget. They determine the cooperating organizations and partners are necessary. They submit to the Rotary Foundation for approval, and then they together implement the grant. So there's this, I think it's a 54-page document, Guide to Global Grants. You read it and your eyes may roll in the back of your head because you think it's so complicated. But actually, once you go through it, it's not as daunting as it may seem. There's basically these steps shown here on the left. It can take anywhere from 6 to 12 months to 3 years to actually implement a project, depending on the complexity of the project. So first you have to identify and document, in this case, a microfinance project idea. You have to find the partner Rotary clubs. Critically important, complete a community assessment. And this has to be in the words of the local people that they want this and need this. Rotary, many years back, would spend millions of dollars on global grants, and then they would leave, and then everything would fall apart and the grant wasn't sustainable. So they do the community assessment and the sustainability piece to make sure that these projects continue and are successful after Rotary is no longer involved. You need a detailed budget. Then you fundraise. The fundraising can take place in parallel with doing some of these steps, but you have to fundraise to the budget amount. And remember, you get cash from clubs and donors. You can get DDF from districts. And then that DDF is matched by the Rotary Foundation at 80%. So for global grants, you're multiplying your dollars. So I'm always an advocate of, if you're going to do a microfinance project, do it through a global grant because you're doubling or tripling the funds. You finalize the application, send it off, get it approved through the regional grant officer at the Rotary Foundation. You submit the application. Oh, I usually recommend you get feedback from the RGO, the regional grants officer, before you submit the application. Implement the project, complete the required reports. So hopefully that's useful to some of you who have not done global grants in the past. So this particular global grant with Adelante was between the Denver Cherry Creek Rotary Club in Colorado and the Rotan Rotary Club. It was a $72,000. It is a $72,000 global grant. $50,000 of that is the loan pool, which is the funds that will be used to give out the individual loans. So quickly, just how we address these 6 pillars of microfinance. The community assessment at the Honduras level, it's the second poorest country in Latin America, second only to Haiti. There's widespread poverty, lack of education, food insecurity, poor infrastructure, and no access to financial resources. You can get this information from a municipality, or there's much data on poverty levels in. And then as far as the local need and showing that the local community needs this and wants this, here is an example of more detailed community assessment. Particular regions in Rotan that have large populations in poverty were identified. It said my internet was unstable, so I was pausing. And then we actually created a profile of the person who would be the recipient of the loans. So you can read down through this. I won't read it to you, but there's a very specific profile of the type of person that will be selected for these loans. And in this case, Adelante identified these people, interviewed these people, selected these people, trained these people, mentored these folks, and helped them to create successful small businesses. So Jody, hopefully we'll talk more about this, but the desired outcome and impact will be in all of these areas. Increased household income, increased resiliency to be able to overcome challenges that may happen, more gender equality. Interestingly enough, in Honduras, Adelante gives loans to women. Women have a higher repayment rate and higher successful businesses. Once a household has increased income, then more of that income can go to education and to healthy and more secure food situation. And an interesting side note is that through these loans and this creation of successful businesses and increased household income, then people are also reducing their carbon footprint and helping with some of the those challenges in the world. So along the other five pillars, I just wanted to show how this grant is measured, what the specific outcomes have been targeted to be, and then how each of those will be measured. And again, through Adelante, the mentoring, the networking, and the monitoring and evaluation will take place through that cooperating organization. So that's just a quick run through of how RAGCED can help you with microfinancing projects or grants, and an example of a specific global grant. If you'd like to get started with a microfinancing type project or grant, then RAGCED can help you start and complete that successfully. So there's my contact information. Feel free to reach out to me if I may be of assistance. And I see Jody is back, so hopefully we can now do this in reverse order, and I'll hand it off to her. Thank you very much.
I'm so sorry for the interruption. I've ran down the street to a co-working space that has a generator, so you should be able to hear me from here on out. I caught the last part of your presentation, Robin, so I'm hoping that there's not too much overlap, but I don't know when I got cut off, so again, I apologize if I'm doing any repeat, but I do want to make sure to share the difference between microcredit and microfinance, just because that is a common confusion for folks. But microcredit is the provision of small loans to typically impoverished populations, whereas microfinance is a larger scope of financial services, which includes microloans, the microcredit, as well as other financial services such as insurance, savings, and preferably is always accompanied by financial literacy education. The why behind microfinance, I really like to emphasize that it's really much more of a hand up instead of a hand out. So many people who live in poverty are so accustomed to receiving assistance that is a hand out, which increases interdependency, whereas microfinance is really something that gives women and their families agency over their choices and is a hand up so that they are empowered over their choices and getting through those, breaking through those intergenerational cycles of poverty. Many people, I just like to go into this because a lot of people think that microfinance started in the 1970s thanks to Muhammad Yunus and the Grameen Bank in Bangladesh. I just like to make sure that people understand that this is something that's been around for centuries. It was originally introduced by someone named Jonathan Swift in the late 1700s in Ireland. It gained momentum and it was used throughout the potato famine for several centuries. It just didn't gain popularity until Muhammad Yunus implemented. He received a Nobel Peace Prize for that work. It's, as I mentioned before, I don't know how much was caught, but I have been doing international humanitarian work for almost 20 years. And I wholeheartedly believe that microfinance is one of the most powerful, sustainable development tools for people living in poverty. As Robin also mentioned, there's lots of other additional outcomes from providing microfinance to individuals. Not only does it increase household income, it increases resiliency, meaning that they are able to better pivot when there are external shocks and impacts. It also helps with gender equality. The way that Adelante does it, we make sure that in certain cultures, when there's issues between men and women and potential, we focus on women. It doesn't mean we don't ever loan to men, but it's very rare. I'll go into the why of why we focus on women on the next slide, but the way we do it is when we first start working with a woman, the well-being officers ask them, hey, do you have a family member, a husband, a brother, a father who might take issue with you participating in a microfinance program? And if so, would it be helpful for us to sit down collectively and really explain what it is and why it's helpful. And usually when the men understand the positive economic impacts for them and their family, they're far more likely to be on board, and it's less likely to breed resentments. There's also another outcome is a higher number of children of women participants tend to go to school for longer years, for more years. The average age that Adelante, or the average education level of beneficiaries for Adelante clients, tends to be 6th grade. So the idea is not only are we wanting to help the families right here and now, but we want to make sure microfinance is very good at making sure that the intergenerational cycles of poverty are broken. We have loan products that also include agriculture loans, but even if you're working with microfinance organizations that don't specifically focus on that, there are a lot of microfinance loans that are utilized to help with food security. And as Robin mentioned, there are also other low carbon pathways that result from participating in microfinance programs. We've had women who have gotten things like solar, clean cooking stoves. We never push those products per se, but that is often a positive outcome from participating. Why women? Statistically speaking, women in poor rural regions of the world are known to be more reliable borrowers of credit than men. They are more likely to reinvest profits back into their families, which is why both Adelante as well as many microfinance organizations out there focus on the provision of loans to women. The additional reason is also that women are less likely to have a credit history and collateral. So in many developing countries, women are not allowed to be landowners. So this is an additional reason why we focus on women. Methodology of successful projects. Again, I'm speaking from the Adelante Foundation example. In Honduras, there's many countries worldwide that experience widespread corruption and government issues that make it difficult. But it's that lack of infrastructure that really does necessitate outside support in humanitarian projects. Our mission is to empower women in Honduras with access to finance, but there's 1.7 billion people, unbanked people in the world. So microfinance is just one of those tools that is able to help address that. We often see banks that are willing to lend to organizations like ours for low to no interest because they are often required to lend to this group, but they don't want to because of how arduous the process can be. So this is just something to be aware of, that there's a lot of banks that would like to, but just don't have the capacity to do so. Adelante has been doing the work that we have been committed to for over 20 years in Honduras. It started in the aftermath of Hurricane Mitch, and the founder saw that there was a lot of great disaster relief that was happening in the country, but they really wanted to do something that would help the economy and the people of the country long term. So microfinance, after doing much research and connecting with a lot of people in Honduras, microfinance was determined to be the best possible tool to help with long-term development and support of the population there. Like many other developing countries, these components, poverty, natural disasters, food insecurity, low education, gender inequality, this is something that impacts countries worldwide, right? But Honduras, we focus specifically in that country alone. It is the second poorest Latin American country, second only to Haiti. Over 70% of Hondurans live below the poverty line, and there are a lot of external shocks, mostly natural disasters in the country that really impact. I know that in addition to Hurricane Mitch over 20 years ago, there was also hurricanes Iota and Eta 3 years ago, compounded by COVID. created a lot of problems and increased that poverty level. But microfinance is certainly a tool that can help in those circumstances. Factors for success. If you're looking to work with cooperating organizations like Adelante, I would say it's really important to make sure that the beneficiaries are that they live in poverty, but not necessarily the poorest of the poor. Microfinance is not intended for the poorest of the poor. They often need aid. Whereas you kind of look at it 1 or 2 levels above, and microfinance is a more appropriate tool. Adelante, over our 23 years of doing our work, we have a 97% repayment rate. We had to work really hard to get there. The first 5 years, that was not the case. But I do think that when you target potential microfinance cooperating organizations, that you take a good look at their financials and make sure that they do in fact have a good high repayment rate. One of the ways we are able to strengthen that is because our well-being officers are very regularly in contact with the borrowers. So for example, the first time a client gets a loan, the well-being officer, first of all, does like a very intensive one-on-one assessment and then like support within the first week. Then their visits maybe go once a week, then once every other week, and then thereafter monthly, just to check in, make sure that the women are getting the support that they need. Sometimes we're working with women who are starting a first-time business. Sometimes they already have a business and they wish to grow it. So the needs will be unique on any given circumstance, but the well-being officer's role is really to be a mentor. When I go on client site visits, I live here in Honduras. When I go on client site visits, Robin has been with me too. You can see a really strong rapport between the well-being officer. This is a term we call, it's more commonly known as a credit officer. But since our credit officers are doing so much more than doling out money and collecting money, we give them a different term, or a title, but at Adelante, our loan range typically goes from $50 up to $2,500. That higher range is really not as common. It's usually reserved for women who have come back and repeatedly borrowed and have like a couple-year history with our organization. Our average first-time loan to a new client is usually in the $250. And of course, that number will range depending on the country in which you are hoping to work. I am a staff at Adelante, but we have 50 Honduran staff that implement this so that we can reach about 5,000 women per year. We have 5 branch offices throughout the country, but I always make sure to share with people, like, make sure you're working with local staff when and if appropriate. I do know that there's some Rotarian microfinance programs that are run entirely by Rotarians as well. We also, because we're a women serving organization, we have women in positions of leadership. Sometimes in certain countries, it's not as easy to find people with the right skill set to do that. But we just like to see that, and the person who is our general manager right now, for example, with someone who's worked at the organization for 12 years. She started out as an accountant for the organization and she worked her way up. But, you know, we made a purposeful effort to make sure to mentor her through that process so that we would see more women in positions of leadership within our organization. A typical client, you know, for Adelante, and should be the case for any organization that you consider to work with in terms of cooperating microfinance organizations. They're often living, you know, they're living in poverty. They're often in rural communities. Typically, they're working in the informal sector. A lot of our clients are in farming, agriculture, food. You know, they may have a tortilleria, carniceria, bakery. Sometimes they're in manufacturing or retail. But we do make sure to have a little bit of, so we have about 75% of our portfolio are women who really do live in extreme poverty, whereas we try to create a little bit of loan portfolio protection by having at least 25% of our portfolio kind of in the higher tiers of poverty, so that we're not, so that our loan portfolio is not at too great of risk. We find that at least in Honduras, and I know this is the case in a lot of African countries as well, a lot of the women that we work with have access to mobile technology, which allows us to do things like mobile banking or provide education modules online. How am I doing on time?
You're doing fine. Please continue.
Okay, great. Okay. So at Adelante, 90% of our loan portfolio goes towards working capital, meaning women who are either starting or growing a business. And that can be either individual loans or group loans. When we first started doing this work 20 years ago, almost all of our working capital loans were group loans, meaning groups of 5, 6, 7 individuals who were held collectively responsible for one another's loans. So if one woman defaulted on their payment 1 week or 1 month, then the rest of the women in that group would help to pay their payment for that month. We have found that over the years that this group model is not as effective, one, because there's less women in the communities that we work that feel obligated to support one another. We do find that group loans tend to be more effective in the rural communities where women are more interdependent and on one another. We are seeing much more individual loans, and part of that for us in Honduras is because when we first started doing the work that we were doing, there was no competition with other microfinance organizations, whereas now there's a lot more for-profit microfinance organizations. And so women will be like, oh, why would I do a group loan if I could go get a loan in the next community from another microfinance organization that will give it to me directly, and I'm not then held responsible for someone else's loan. So those are the two factors in which and why we are doing more individual loans, but that will be case by case dependent, depending on what country you're working in and what the culture is. 10% of our loan portfolio is reserved for things like agriculture loans, education, water and sanitation, and home improvement. We have a distinction between agricultural loans just because they get different loan terms. So they take a longer in terms of return on investment, so we give them a longer time to pay that back. Education loans are intended for women who have children who are not going to school because of barriers. The cost of school in Honduras is free, but they have additional costs such as the materials, the books, the uniforms, shoes, sometimes transportation costs. So at a certain time of year in the beginning of the school year, we will offer really small education loans to women to ensure that their children are able to go to school that year. We started off for water and sanitation loans because we were finding that there was a partner that we were able to work with called Water for People, who were able to provide low cost water and sanitation solutions for the clients that we worked with, so that they could have things like latrines or fresh water access, industrial sinks, things like this. And this, we find that not only does that ultimately help directly with certain types of businesses, especially in the food sector, but it also is helping to improve the health of women and their families, which ultimately lends itself to greater productivity and business success. We only do home improvement loans for women who are repeat borrowers. But the idea is, so if a woman has a leaky roof or she needs a retaining wall to help with the rising river, that they're able to protect their assets. And again, kind of similar to the wash loans, where they're able to be more productive because they're healthier and getting better night's sleep, etc. I went into this a little bit already. I think the most important thing to know from this slide is that, we do loan repayment cycles, typically 6 to 10 months for working capital. Usually that's 18 months for agriculture loans. So it just depends on the woman's how big the loan is that they're taking out, whether they're a first-time borrower or kind of repeat borrower. But we're always doing our very best to minimize our what we call PAR, portfolio at risk, by making sure that we're lending 25% of our portfolio to individuals that are above the poverty line, as I mentioned earlier. I like showing a picture of our staff. This is our leadership staff. We have 50 staff located throughout Honduras. These are the different Tacoa, La Ceiba, El Progreso, Cihuatepeque, and Choluteca are all the areas that we have branch offices. But our leadership staff are located in La Ceiba on the northern coast. You don't see Roatan pictured here, but that is where we're going to be starting a satellite office by partnering with both the local Rotary Club here, as well as the Denver Cherry Creek Rotary Club, and those that are also financially supporting in the US. But I live here at this time. I welcome visitors. If you want to learn more, I'm happy to share more. I do like showing a snapshot. This is outdated for Adelante, but I do like to mention that, like, although we've been around for quite some time, our loan portfolio is closer to 2 million right now. But what I like to make sure to share with people is that even when you have, say it's $1,000 loan portfolio, you should be able to at least 50%, disperse more than that in a given year with short loan terms. So every time a loan is repaid, it's reinvested into the loan pool and dispersed to women who need it. I'm getting close to done, but I do like to just say that, it's Adelante does charge a low interest rate, 5%. That interest rate goes down with repeat borrowers that have created a credit history with the organization. But that 5% does allow us to cover things like our operational costs, which ultimately allows us to be more sustainable as an organization. When I raise funds or, when we receive grants, it helps to offset things like cost of financial literacy education and expansion into new regions. Okay, there's lots of challenges that we have faced and that a lot of microfinance organizations tend to face. I will say that there is sometimes a temptation, because there are a lot of for-profit microfinance organizations out there. We just like to, even if you're not working with a legally registered nonprofit, we like to make sure that people are educating the borrowers about indebtedness, because it is not appropriate to place people living in poverty in greater debt. I know that at Adelante, we do a lot to help restructure loans when there is difficulty repaying them. There's a lot of for-profit microfinance organizations that have been criticized because of their predatory lending techniques. So make sure you do not get involved with one of them. There's also situations where in certain countries and communities, there is more than one microfinance organization offering support. And you need to be really careful because sorry, I just got distracted. Because what may happen is the borrowers may be tempted to borrow money from more than one source at any given time. So making sure that the clients understand the issues related to indebtedness is really important. Adelante offers financial literacy training that ranges from understanding over indebtedness, as well as cash flow, how to create a budget, how to understand profit and loss, making sure a certain percentage is saved, things like that. Okay, this is pretty much my last slide, and I just like to I've worked with Rotary organizations on global grants before. There's lots of different ways. I think Robin may have already covered some of this, but just like to make sure that having a good working relationship with your cooperating organization is really great. Sometimes if you're working only with local staff, that may be challenging. I know at Adelante, we are fortunate because I'm in a position to liaise between both people in the US as well as our staff and beneficiaries in Honduras. But there's lots of ways to potentially collaborate. We offer impact tours where we bring people to see and meet the women who are benefiting from our programs. But I know cooperating organizations almost always appreciate anything that helps raise awareness about the important work that we're doing. We always appreciate having ambassadors who are able to join and participate in strengthening the organization, whether that be on the board or on a committee, but anything in terms of allies to amplify the message of the work. And then there's often ways to volunteer either as a club, as an entire club, or as individuals. I know, like Adelante, for example, we often need help with like PR, marketing, sometimes translation services, because I don't have time to do everything. But lots of different ways. We work with a lot of partners on the ground. We get a lot of pro bono support from local businesses. So there's just lots of ways to get involved. This is my contact information. I'm happy to field any questions. As I know, Robin and Carl are as well. But should you have any interest in reaching out directly, I'm happy to connect.
Thank you, Jody. It was a lovely
Thank you very much. And Robin, also thank you very much. So those are our two presentations. Let's now move into our question and answer session. If you have questions at this point, please raise your hand or put something in the chat box. We've already received several questions, so we'll begin. So obviously, one way Rotary clubs can be involved is through being on a global grant. Are there ways Rotary clubs can be involved short of undertaking a global grant? How else might they participate with the Rotary Foundation?
You want me to take that, Carl?
Or Wally, is that, I see you're on the call. Is that a question you could answer for them?
Oh, nothing like putting a guy on the spot. Sure. There's a lot of places you can look for global grants that are being done. One of them is matchinggrants.org. That will give you a pretty good snapshot of what's happening in the world in terms of microfinance and microcredit projects. It's likely a really good idea if you're just getting your feet wet in the whole field and want to get involved, is join in with a club that's actually doing one now. If you talk to the Rotary Foundation itself, to Bonaventure Fandahan, who's our area focus manager, he can tell you which projects are actually happening in oh, they want this me to confirm I'm in English. Okay, I'm in English. Lo siento a todos. Pero when you're looking for a project, the Bonaventure Fandahan, the area focus manager, can indeed tell you which projects are coming up, which ones are getting into the finalization stages of global grants, and the regional grants officers for that particular region. For example, there is one for Honduras. If you're interested in doing one in Colombia or Ecuador or Peru, there's a different person within the Rotary Foundation structure that is looking after those. So that will give you some contact people and say, hey, I understand you're doing a global grant and you've done a couple of them. We'd like to sort of tag along and support you in that. So those are a couple of options that you can do. And any of us at RAGCED.org will be pleased and delighted to help you actually find another project that's going on as well. And the important part is to get feedback from that project and use that as a learning opportunity for your club to train their members on actually how you do a proper global grant project, the ins and outs of microfinance and microcredit, And when you're working with an established organization such as Fundación Adelante, you can then learn along the way to the point where you can stand on your own 2 feet and look for alliances amongst groups that you can partner with. So there's a lot of opportunity here, and we'd be pleased to help.
Great. Well, thank you, Wally. Let me
I
add
think
on to
the
some of
question
the.
asked,
Go ahead, Robin.
I thought the question was what can be done outside of global grants. So I just want to mention there's also international district grants. District
Mhm.
grants are smaller, they're less onerous as far as the process. So you can also do
Mhm.
international district grants. You can do a project outside of a grant, but then you don't get matching from TRF, which is very valuable.
Yeah, your impact
So,
won't be as
Robin,
high.
how would someone do an international district grant?
District grants actually are managed at the district level. I'm a district international service chair, so I understand how that goes. In your district that puts money into the foundation, it's held for 3 years. The Rotary Foundation has the interest, and then that's returned back to the district. Half of the money that's returned back in DDF every 3 years can go to district grants, and half can go to global grants. And then how that district DDF that's returned is managed is controlled by the district. And so in our district, people just propose any district grants that they want. We have policies and rules for how that works and how we match the money and the reporting requirements, et cetera. So to make a long story short, reach out to your district international service chair if you don't know how district grants work in your district.
Right. So just to add on to that, every Rotary district around the world has a Rotary Foundation committee. Part of that are the people who deal with district grants, and maybe make a simple inquiry to them: is anybody doing a microfinance related project as a district grant? Now, the other thing on this, going back to the original question, is ways that a club could participate other than, in effect, being a host or an international partner on a grant, is simply to contact some of the people that Wally was talking about to see if you could be, in effect, an add-on participant. And you could, and your club could participate easily in two ways. One, of course, is to send money for, and that could be just a small sum of money, or by sending, qualified people in your club to participate on that. So the people you would want to talk to, as you mentioned, would be either contact Bonaventure Fandohan, who I believe is on the call here, and you can reach him at Rotary International, and he can provide that. The other way that we encourage you to do is to contact RAGCED. And the best way within RAGCED is to contact our operations committee. And you can find that on our website, ragced.org. Go and then contact the operations committee, and they'll be happy to help advise you on ways that you could do this. So
could we also mention, Carl, the idea that Jody brought up is insight tours. We've done that within Rotary as well, where you take a bunch of people from a Rotary club who may be way outside their comfort level, and take them on a tour to show them exactly where Rotary dollars are going to, and the social impact that a program that in microfinance is actually doing. That then creates a whole bunch of champions that go back to their club and say, hey, I was just in Honduras. You wouldn't believe what these guys are doing, and we should be supporting them. That gets you a champion within each club and helps with your fundraising to actually support programs that are going on, and does more good, better in the world than that you can do individually.
Very good. So I have a number of other questions here. How does microfinance align with Rotary's goals? Robin or Jody, or anyone else want to take that?
Well, it's perfect alignment with, we have our 7 areas of focus, and within those areas of focus is community and economic development. And community and economic development is one of the key areas for eliminating or reducing poverty in the world. And poverty is one of the greatest challenges in the world today. And I would argue is the basis for many of the other problems we see in the world. So, to keep it a simple soundbite, our mission is to do good in the world. And this is one of the key areas where we can, to steal Jody's words, to give a hand up rather than a handout, and have sustainable, improved economic viability and reduction of poverty around the world.
Very good. Another question we have is does Rotary or RAGCED provide training for microfinance project leaders? And maybe just generalize that to training that might be provided. Robin or Wally?
This would be a great time to put a plug in for our microfinance manual that we developed for the Hamburg conference. That's available on our website. Look for our manual there, which will give you sort of a step-by-step approach of how to do and manage a global grant in microfinance. It's a really excellent resource. Unfortunately, it's only available in English because we haven't got around to translating into other useful languages such as Spanish, but we're working on that part. But the website itself has some other case studies that will give you a good idea of other projects that people have done successfully in the past. And the term networking keeps getting used over and over again here, but networking, finding other people have been down that road ahead of you, will help you get around some of the obstacles and pitfalls of a microfinance program.
Okay. Robin, anything else to add to that, or Jody? Okay, another question we have is individual Rotary members, how might they get involved in a microfinance project? Someone who's a member of a club and the club isn't doing anything particular. What thoughts do you have on that?
I'm happy to chime in here. I mean, I think there's different microfinance organizations with a variety of different needs. So it just depends on the particular organization and what their needs are at any given time. Like I know with Adelante, for example, and I mentioned this a little bit on some of the concluding slides, but we have a variety of volunteer roles that people can get involved in, and that can be remotely, that can be on the ground. We're always like once the things start getting rolling with the project on the Bay Islands, we are hoping that there will be people other than myself that will be able to help host some of those impact tours. So if you have, 2 people that are visiting, whether they're going on a cruise, coming in on a cruise ship, or they're coming down specifically to learn about microfinance. But if there's someone who's able to come and kind of help walk them through, like, hey, do you want to visit 1 client, 2 borrowers, 3, and then spend either a half hour, 1 hour, up to 3 hours visiting. And I always say, like, make sure it's women who could also benefit from sharing their time. Like I try to go to places like a tortilleria or a bakery or a fruit stand, where then if people also want to purchase something, that the borrowers aren't just taking their time to entertain, or not entertain, but sharing their story. But there's also a potential benefit in it for them too. But that knowledge sharing, I feel like then it's kind of win-win, 2-way street. But there's usually circumstances like I had said, like I'm always in need of, because I'm the only gringa on the staff. So I'm always trying to like help make sure that the organization is able to, we're always looking for ambassadors, people who are willing to host functions, even if it's just like a small tea party or a book club that wants to read a book about us. It's just important to help people and understand in their respective communities that there are solutions for people living in poverty, and it doesn't have to be, it can be supporting organizations that are already doing this work. So raising awareness is and being an ambassador, offering to host an event, things like that. That's always really wonderful ways that I know that our organization loves to see people involved. I'm sure, Robin, can you think of others? I know that you've helped Adelante in a number of ways.
As far as ways to get involved and learn, I'll reinforce what Wally said. If you can find a global grant project or any other microfinance project going on, being led by other clubs, jump in and shadow that project and get involved and learn and volunteer. Reach out in your region for the Adelante equivalent and see if they're doing some of the things like Jody's suggesting. They're doing impact tours, those kinds of things. Another way to learn about how to help a small business succeed and grow is to get involved in organizations that mentor small businesses through your, I know in the US, there are different organizations, and it's escaping my brain right now. Jim might be able to help me out, but through small business, small business administration. That's a government agency. You can volunteer to help small businesses and just get yourself immersed in kind of how to help entrepreneurs and small businesses and how they get funding. So there's some ideas.
Let me add one last one before we move on to the next question, which is through RAGCED. If you have interest in that, then I suggest you contact us and we can help direct you, to the right part of the either our organization or within Rotary overall to help get you connected that way. After all, that's a key thing that Rotary does, which is connecting people with others. We think we can help you with that. So let me move on. Helen Dudley has her hand up, so go ahead.
Yeah, there's another option for those who don't want to have an official global grant, and that is TCP Global. Our organization came out of the Peace Corps experience, but we've been connected to Rotary for like the last 10 years since I became a member. Of the 7 members on our board, 4 are Rotarians. And the picture behind me is the Rotary Club of Yumbe, and that was formed of borrowers who received loans from TCP Global. We're not really sanctioned by Rotary because we don't work through an MFI. What we do is we work through local organizations that are already working effectively at the grassroots level, and then they give out loans to people, mostly from Women's Village Savings and Loan Associations, which have a history of managing loan programs. So if anyone wants to learn more about our program, you could reach me at contact@tcpglobal.ngo. And for anyone that gets involved in supporting us, we would send you a newsletter every other week, and we can send you financial reports that show how much money's been lent out and how much the repayment rate is. Our repayment rate is 98%. So there isn't another option that is, and we work in some of the poorest communities in the world. I was late to the meeting because I was on a Zoom call with Niger, where we have 40 VSLA groups that partner with us. So please reach out to me or through Carl if you want more information.
Okay, so your organization is at tcpglobal.org.
Right, that's correct.
Right, so that's her
No,
website.
I'm sorry. No, tcpglobal.ngo.
.ngo. Okay.
Yeah.
Right. Sorry about that. Okay, so tcpglobal.ngo. Right.
Correct.
So we've heard examples principally from Latin America here, and then a brief mention about Africa. What about Asia? Anyone on the call with experience with microfinance there, and how might it be different than what you've heard so far today?
We're in Asia, in Nepal.
Ah, okay, good. All right. And any others? So, okay. One more question here is, okay, so let's see. About that. Any other examples of success stories with Rotary involving microfinance that we might share with the group? Okay. Well, with that in mind.
One of the future,
Oh, yeah. Go ahead, Robin.
as Carlos mentioned, this is one of a series of 5 on microfinance. I believe maybe the second or third in the series, we will be talking about many real examples of success in this area. So join in next time and we can share more examples.
Good. So can you see my screen, hopefully?
That's all.
Great. So you may want to individually follow up with our presenters. And so I put up here the email addresses for each of them. Robin's is there, Jody's is there, and you may also contact me if you want, since I am the president of RAGCED this year. Also, one of the things you might consider doing is to download the chat that we've had, because there's several important references in there. If you're not sure how to do that, then click the 3 dots on the bottom of the chat, and that will help you save it to your own computer. As mentioned, we have some upcoming webinars too. The next one, well, actually, this session will be repeated later today at 6 p.m. Eastern Time, which is UTC -5. And you'll be able to hear the same thing. We'll also have 4 more sessions. The next session is going to be on February 8th, again at 9 o'clock Eastern Time. And then we'll have another session on March 14th, April 11th, and we'll conclude the series on May 9th. So I encourage you to mark those down so you can attend or share this with other people. The objectives for session 2 are going to be, first, to offer details about the microfinance process, and then focus in particular on lessons learned by others who have done this before. So I think we've had a lot of good information today. We'll have a lot more coming up on it. Before closing, one last thing I want to mention, special thanks to Gomathi and also Rakesh Babuji, because they have encouraged quite a number of Rotary clubs in India, Brazil, and several other countries to participate, getting a lot of members of those clubs to be here today. And we certainly thank you for that. Anyone else, we encourage you to get members of your Rotary Club to come, because we think there's a lot of useful information here. So really, in closing, we at RAGCED clearly believe you can make a big difference in this area of focus. So we encourage you to consider doing some type of a community economic development project, either with your Rotary Club or sharing your experiences and your expertise with other clubs. And we have several ways you can do it through RAGCED. I encourage you to take a look at our newsletter, our website, and our social media. A lot of useful information there. And you can get hold of us in these ways. Of course, our website. You can also find us on Facebook, and you can email us at info@ragced.org. So with that, I want to say thank you to our presenters today, Robin Steele from the Rotary Club of Fort Collins, Colorado, USA, and also particularly to Jody Fisher from Fundación Adelante. And also, as here on the screen, we have clubs. These are the clubs in particular. Thank you for getting your members to participate in it. We look forward to seeing you either this evening at 6 p.m. Eastern Time to see this again, or at our next session. Thank you very much to everyone, and have a great day or a great evening wherever you might happen to be in the world.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye. Gomati, thank you very much. So,
Thank you all.
yeah,
Thank you, everyone.
yes.
I'm going to end the session. Bye, everyone.